Hey ladies and gentlemen, Chris of the Polish Geek, and welcome to another video. And this time I decided to do the ranking, and I will be ranking all the 4 Kung Fu Panda movies from worst to best, with number 4 being my least favorite and number 1 being my favorite, because Kung Fu Panda 4 just came out and I did a whole review on it. You probably already know. It's because it's actually one of my most popular videos now I see. So chances are if you're watching me, you've likely already seen it, and so you probably know I very much didn't like it. But I will do the ranking of all the 4 Kung Fu Panda movies. I also know there were plenty of Kung Fu Panda shows and all. I haven't seen any of them. I only seen the movies, so I'll just do the ranking of all the 4 Kung Fu Panda movies. Because Kung Fu Panda was my second favorite DreamWorks franchise, after of course How to Train Your Dragon. My favorite DreamWorks movie of all time is actually The Prince of Egypt, but How to Train Your Dragon was actually my favorite DreamWorks franchise, and Kung Fu Panda was second favorite franchise. So let's now do the ranking of all the 4 Kung Fu Panda movies. And number 4, at the last place, the worst, is Kung Fu Panda 4, of course, because I already been saying in my review that I really didn't like the movie, and I think it's practically very insulting to everything that came before. I don't understand, why couldn't they at least show more of the Furious 5? I mean, sure, they gave an explanation for their absence, but I really wish they had a bigger cameo, because I just love the Furious 5, and also that character of the squirrel, she felt just nothing more than a cheap replacement for the Furious 5, and her character arc, although there was a twist I didn't expect, after the twist it became so predictable and cliche, and the Chameleon is by far the worst Kung Fu Panda villain ever. And honestly, the only saving grace of this movie is that the animation is still pretty good, as are the voice actors, and I guess the relationship between Mr. Pink and Poe's real biological father, I mean, that actually was pretty funny. But other than that, it's the worst Kung Fu Panda movie, one of the worst DreamWorks movies, and all that, pretty much a very bad movie, and I was so disappointed in it. Number 3, and that's Kung Fu Panda 3, and I know a lot of people already don't like that one, but one thing is certain, it's certainly much better than Kung Fu Panda 4, and I actually kind of like the movie. I don't think it's as good as the first 2, but I still think it's a pretty good movie for what it is. I think the animation is good, and I also like the whole idea of Poe inheriting the staff from Master Oogway. This is a pretty interesting story, and I think Kai is a pretty good villain. Maybe not the best Kung Fu Panda villain, but still pretty good and compelling, and I really like his connection to the past and Master Oogway. I really like that, and I also like the Hidden Valley of the Pandas. That's really interesting, and I was Poe meeting his new biological father and their developing father-son relationship, as well as how his adopted father, Mr. Ping, kind of teaches Poe's biological father about actually being a father. That's all good. And so, the movie is nowhere near as good as the first 2, but I still think it's a nice conclusion to the trilogy and a pretty good ending. And the more I think about it, the more I realize how really unnecessary Kung Fu Panda 4 was. So, Kung Fu Panda 3, not as good as the first 2, but very good for what it is, and nice conclusion to the trilogy. Number 2, and that's the very first original Kung Fu Panda, and I still think this is one of DreamWorks' better movies. I really like the story of Poe and how he dreams of Kung Fu and wishes to become a Kung Fu master, and although he initially, everyone thinks he can't really do it because he's like a panda and he's so fat, so no one thinks he can do it, but he proves everyone wrong, and I really like his journey of becoming a Kung Fu master, and also I really like the Chinese setting and all, and plus it's also the very movie that introduced us to this world of China and Kung Fu, and also it introduced us to the Furious 5. As I said, I really like the Furious 5, and I still think Tai Lung is actually the best Kung Fu Panda villain. I mean, all 3 of the villains of the first three movies were pretty good and compelling, but I still think Tai Lung is by far the best one, and the action scenes here are really good, and it's also pretty funny too. Overall, I think the first Kung Fu Panda is still a very good movie, holds up very well, and still one of DreamWorks' better movies. And certainly it's a really great franchise starter. But my number one favorite Kung Fu Panda movie is, and I think a lot of people will agree here with me, because that's Kung Fu Panda 2. And now, this is the only one of those four movies I'll go as far as to say it's actually a great movie, because I generally really hate the mentality bigger means better. I don't think bigger means better always. I mean, it very much might, but sometimes it's not always the case. But here I think it's a perfect example where I do in fact think bigger means better, because just as the first Kung Fu Panda introduced us the world of ancient China and Kung Fu, this movie on the other hand very much expanded on it and introduced us to so many new things, like Lord Shen is a really good villain, maybe not as good as Tai Lung, but he's still very much a really good villain in his own right. And physically, he actually looks the coolest of all the Kung Fu Panda villains, and I also really love how he's tied into a backstory of Po. And speaking of which, I also really love how we finally learn the backstory of Po and how he was adopted by Mr. Ping. I mean, we could have figured it out that he's actually adopted in the first movie, but this is the movie where this is actually finally touched upon in the very beginning, and we really learn how it was and all. And I also really like how now Po finally developed friendship with the Furious Five, and their chemistry and evolving relationship is also really good, and the action scenes are even better here than in the first movie. Like, yes, I think Kung Fu Panda 2 is by far the best Kung Fu Panda movie, and that's the one that really solidified Kung Fu Panda as my second favorite franchise of DreamWorks after How to Train Your Dragon, because this is the only one of those three movies I might go as far as to say it's like 10 out of 10, or maybe 9 out of 10, but yeah, this is the only one of those three movies I'll go as far as to say it's a great movie. But here is my ranking of all the four Kung Fu Panda movies, and thank you guys for checking out this video. Press the like button, please subscribe to this channel, and I will talk to you soon in another video. Talk to you later, bye!